Hello, my name is Kitty Riele and I'm from the Peter Underwood Centre at the University of Tasmania in Australia. I'm delighted to be part of this virtual event by the BERA Alternative Education SIG. Just a little bit to explain flexi schools in the Australian context. These schools offer secondary school level education. In Australia it's referred to as year 7 to 12. And they change the approach to schooling, for example, the pedagogy, the curriculum, the culture and mission of the school, to suit their students, rather than expecting students to fit in with the school. And the students themselves tend to be young people who either were rejected by or themselves have rejected conventional schooling models. Now, for young people in flexi schools, being interested in their learning is often a novel experience and one that they value highly. Having been disengaged by and from conventional education, recognition of their existing interests, as well as opening windows to new interests, is both a powerful and an empowering approach. Research on interest shows that there are several dimensions. And just as a side note, at the end of the presentation, I will provide some links to sources, which will then link through to all of that research that I'm drawing on. So interest may be individual, based on individuals' own preferences and dispositions, or interest may be based on the situation and the interestingness of the particular learning environment. It has both a cognitive and an affective dimension, and of course those are interlinked. In terms of the cognitive dimension, interest functions as a bridge between the person and the curriculum content. And this bridge means that fulfilling a learning task contributes to a person's expression of the self that they wish to be. And in terms of the affective dimension, it's really important that this is not just about personal well-being, but also about the connection with other people. So I'm going to draw on 3 research sites that were part of 2 different research projects. Now, the unusual nature of flexi schools makes confidentiality difficult. In the 2 research projects, all sites agreed to be named, and in fact wished to be named, and this was permitted through the approved research ethics protocols. I will use the icons on the left throughout the presentation to indicate which particular site I'm referring to. But the 3 sites were the CEDA Sport Development Program in Darwin in the far north of the Northern Territory, the Hunter TAFE Skills for Tomorrow program, which was in a regional area north of Sydney in New South Wales, and the Melbourne Academy in Melbourne, the state capital of Victoria. Now, all 3 sites had small cohorts of between 10 and 25 students. And as a result, students within the site had the same timetable in the same space and with the same teacher. And they all used experiential and project-based learning to draw on interests. But the different sites had different cohorts and therefore a different connection point for interest. At CEDA, it was around the students' shared interest in sport, and this was explicitly used as a hook to draw them in. The classroom was based in a sports club in a building next to an oval, and the curriculum included modules that counted towards a vocational certificate in sport and recreation, and a day a week where the students ran a clinic of sport or recreation activities for a primary school class or for a community organisation. Skills for Tomorrow was set up in response to Australian national legislation that compelled young mothers to attend education. The classroom was in a local community centre with childcare on site for the students' children. And the curriculum included a vocational certificate in community services. And the Melbourne Academy was set up to provide education for some of the most marginalised young people in our society, including homeless youth. It had classrooms in several suburbs in Melbourne, and in this presentation I mainly draw on the North Fitzroy classroom, which had a particular focus on music and had a music studio as part of the classroom. So I'm going to show you an example here, a 40-second excerpt of a video produced by the students in the North Fitzroy classroom.
Straight out of Fitzy, I flew from Melbourne City, Missy. When I'm cold on, I get my day on. Now it's for class that I can count on. This is a place where you're respected. If you make mistakes, you just correct it. We get admitted, trusted, even celebrated. If you say I'm wrong, I'll just debate it. Cause we can set up, it's all about you. It's true, just do what you wanna do. People gonna help you. The attitude I'm in is pretty much, hey, but I don't give a damn cause I'm a school, hey. We'll do what you ask, it's a blast, it's a blast. CCA class, we'll work hard to pass. Pick it up, hurry up, real fast, real fast. I was on the edge, in a different state of mind. I found MCM and left that life all behind. Cause everyone here gets respect.
So I hope you enjoyed it, and you might think it's just a bit of fun, but in fact, the work towards this video was embedded within the official Australian curriculum. It involved researching the social history of rap and hip hop, of analysing the culture and psyche of hip hop, making connections with the music industry, as well as, of course, collaborating on developing the song and storyboarding the video and putting it all together. Okay, so in terms of cognitive dimension, about interest and learning, the first aspect is to do with motivation, where, of course, interest functions as an intrinsic motivator for learning. Or as Dewey puts it, and I'll quote, interest marks the annihilation of the distance between the subject and object, and it is the instrument which affects their organic union. So for Will, it was about everything being easier and better because he likes what he's doing. And in terms of those rap lyrics that we've just heard, it talks about the motivation to get straight up out of bed and to put their nose to the grind. The second aspect is to do with goal relevance, because genuine interest is not just about fun or pleasure, it's about the contribution that fulfilling a learning task makes to a person's expression of the self that they wish to be. However, goal relevance is frequently absent for students in conventional schools. As David Bergen points out, and I quote, goal relevance is particularly problematic in school because few of the subjects that students study or the tasks that they are asked to do are clearly relevant to students' current concerns and goals. End of quote. In contrast, in flexi schools, it's common to use approaches to the curriculum that are relevant and meaningful and authentic for young people. And this responds to Dewey's exhortation, and again I quote, to cease conceiving of education as a mere preparation for later life and make it the full meaning of the present life. And so goal relevance can be at a personal level, like it was for Talia and her peers in relation to the material they were learning in class being immediately relevant to their own life as young mums, whereas for Jacob and Lewis, it was more around relevance for their future pathways. The third aspect is to do with achievement. For some students, the interest that they experienced in the program led to a remarkable transformation and indicating that their achievements would not have been possible without their interest in the program. And Jackson is a real clear example here, where he would have dropped out of school in his conventional school, but through CEDA, he is working towards becoming a sport teacher and gaining competences and achievements. Students in Skills for Tomorrow found that they were able to use what they learned in class about community services to support their friends. And like Talia said, being able to come into class and brag about that, saying, I put my studies to good use. And similarly, in the lyrics for North Fitzroy Melbourne Academy, they talk about a sense of pride of their achievements in learning. Then in terms of the affective dimension of interest, which of course is linked with the cognitive dimension, and a sense of belonging can foster interest, but shared interest also can foster a sense of belonging. And for David Bergen, it's really about belonging to a specific social milieu, so within the social milieu of the flexi school. And certainly for the Skills for Tomorrow students, it was around their shared identity as young mothers because they had all felt social stigma in their community of being frowned upon for having got pregnant and having children so young. And so Pippa talks about how the girls in the class get it, they understand what she's going through. In Melbourne Academy, in the lyrics, they talk about having a class that you can count on, having a place where you're respected, and people who are going to help you. This sense of belonging around students' shared interests led to a high level of peer support, as well as having a strong connection with staff. Now, of course, schools offer an opportunity to foster a sense of belonging, but this does not happen for all students. In the 2015 PISA survey, about a quarter of Australian students indicated that they felt awkward at school, felt like an outsider at school, and that they did not belong at school. At flexi schools, positive relationships and a sense of belonging have long been emphasised as key factors for their success. But interestingly, we found that there was also a sense of belonging outside of the flexi school, not just within, and that in fact interest can serve to connect enhanced connections with the wider community. So students in Skills for Tomorrow, like Talia again, talked about how their learning helped them to become less judgmental about other people in the community. And in Cedar, Elliot talked about being surprised that when he was running clinics and activities for children with disabilities who he had never encountered before, that he actually rather enjoyed this. Within all of these programs, values is placed on fostering students' sense of belonging to the broader community. For example, in Skills for Tomorrow, staff members recognised the discrimination that young mums often experience and made a real effort to ensure that students felt invited and welcome to attend local community events such as a family fun day. And being able to stand proudly in their community because of their learning and achievements in the program really mattered to young people because they had previously felt as being judged as failures. So the findings from all three sites demonstrate that interest is more than just individual responses to the quality or the provocation of content relevance. Personal motivation, engagement, and relevance are all related to the curriculum offered, but also connected to interests and belonging. Learning is meaningful in these settings, and its meaning is made visible in the impact that they have on students' lives. One way student engagement has been theorised is in terms of an interest disconnect between individual students and the prescribed curriculum. However, this research shows that students may not always find personal interest in every aspect of the curriculum in a flexi school, but that their connection and shared interest broadly in the sense of belonging in the site is sustaining and enables them to engage with learning. So flexi schools demonstrate success in terms of learning, gaining qualifications, personal development, with students who frequently have been given up on or perceived as too hard in mainstream schools. Flexi schools are able to be innovative because they are smaller and because they have a mandate to offer something different than the conventions. And staff in these sites have a willingness and indeed an obligation to change default schooling practices in order to support their students. The innovations that make schooling work better for marginalised students in these flexi schools may well also be able to improve schooling for students in mainstream schools. So here are some links to the key sources that are promised in relation to the three sites, with several reports and articles that are in the public domain and that in turn have reference lists to the other sources that I've drawn on. Plus, of course, at the end, a link to the full video of Straight Outta North Fitzy, which you might enjoy watching and which gained a lot of publicity in Australia at the time. Thank you very much to BERA, Alternative Education Seat, for creating this opportunity, to everyone who is taking part in this virtual event, but particularly a big thank you to the staff and young people in flexi schools, not just these three, but flexi schools everywhere in the world, who together demonstrate how to harness interest in order to boost students' learning and belonging. Thank you.